it's me, Mario.
Be careful, it's a trap!
You were close.
Emergency maneuvers!
I am the Lord of Deadside.
I saw my life flash before my eyes! Sorry to jet, but I'm in a hurry.
Hello and welcome to Strictly 64. I'm your host Kay, and joining me today is the wonderfully reliable Clay.
Konnichiwa.
Hello Clay. How you been doing? How's your gaming life been treating you? Been playing much?
Good, yeah, I've been brushing up on my Japanese, so can't complain. I've been good. Things have been well. We are just, we're recording a little ahead of schedule today, so we are just on the brink of ukulele dropping. So we are, you and me both are very excited to get that going. So yeah, I'm doing good.
I already, I changed my console region to try and get it early and it didn't work.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of annoyed about that.
I figured.
Oh, well, never mind.
Yeah, so...
So I have been playing, well, the game we're going to talk about today, and aside from that, I've been playing a lot of Grand Theft Auto lately. It's not N64 related, but just thought I'd throw it out there because not much news to talk about this week, so I thought I'd show you the other side of my gaming interests.
Okay, yeah. I've been playing a little bit of other things. Breath of the Wild I've been playing. I also played some Rocket League last night with some of my friends, and and then I actually played a little bit of Wave Race, getting ready for next week's episode. So I got to play some 2-player, so we'll talk more about that next week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, alright then. Well, as I say, the most of my gaming time the past few days has been taken up by a certain retro classic. So I think it's about time we just discuss it. So this is it, folks. We're doing the big one. This week, it's Mahjong 64. Okay then, let's kick it off with our initial thoughts. Clay?
All right, so my initial thoughts, basically my history with this game is as follows. So about a month ago, I was looking through the interwebs, trying to figure out what games we should cover here on the show, and I was looking through to see if there were any games in the month of April that would be turning the big 2-0 for their 20-year birthday, anniversary, whatever you want to call it. And there was really only 2 games that I was seeing that released in April of 1997, and that was Wave Race and Mahjong 64 in Japan. And so I said, that might be interesting to try to tackle a Japanese game. We haven't covered any on the show here yet, and so I figured, it can't be that bad. It's like a board game. We should do it. At the very least, it'll be worth a chuckle. And so I suggested it to you, and you said, what the heck, why not? So I immediately went online, and I got on the old trusty eBay, and I found a copy for a very cheap price, and went ahead and purchased it. And it was even from a seller local, so I didn't have to wait, the long period of time it takes to get games like that from Japan usually. So it arrived. I played it for a while, realized I didn't know what I was doing, didn't even know how to play Mahjong. And so that was kind of the beginning of this whole experience. But then it wasn't until a week ago that I was looking through at the other Mahjong games for the N64 that I finally realized I had purchased the wrong game. I had purchased one of the ones that released later on, and so with not much time to recuperate and not enough time to order a copy on eBay, I was forced to emulate this one just to make sure I was able to give it a shot. So initial thoughts, I realized when I first played it that, like I said, I don't know the rules to this game. After looking up the rules to Mahjong, I realized that it's a really complex game and takes a lot of time to learn and a lot of time to perfect it. So, but I guess overall, initially, it's a okay looking game. It sounds all right. So it's hard to compare. I mean, I can compare it to the other Mahjong game I have, so that at least gives me a little bit to compare against. And I will say that this one, the original one for the N64, is definitely more upbeat and colorful and bright, and just seems a little bit more easy going, happy going than the other one. The other one I played was much more serious. Most of the characters were a bunch of old guys that I assume were like professional players, whereas in this one, you're a bunch of college students. We'll talk about that in a minute, but so that overall, I could tell this one seemed a lot more fun, maybe for a easier going player, whereas the other one I have was more for maybe the hardcore, competitive scene. So those were my initial thoughts.
Okay, all right then. Well, yeah, Mahjong is one of those games that I've always seen discussed. Not this specific one, but the game of Mahjong in general.
Right.
But I've never actually learned how to play it. Like, I think I've had it a couple of times in MSN Game Pack, stuff like that when I was younger. But it always looked a little confusing to me. So when you mentioned this game, I thought, well, it will give me an excuse to actually learn how to play it. So much like you, I emulated it. I mean, I didn't even attempt to find the cartridge for this one because I would have actually run into difficulties because it's, a Japanese cartridge. And I think, can you guys just plug and play Jap games on American consoles?
I don't know what plug and play means, but...
well, I mean, do you need an adapter or just
yes,
throw it in?
Yes, and so I use my Game Shark and it works perfectly. So,
okay.
But yeah, and
and
for you, what you need is they make a thing that is it's just a connector. It's a piece of plastic that gets it up above, and that you can put anything on it. They sell it online, and there's no whereas the Game Shark actually has a battery or something that powers up. They have a thing that is just a connector that takes your cartridge and connects it to the console. It's hard to explain. I'll send you a link for it. You need to get one because hopefully eventually we'll cover some more Japanese games. But
okay, I'll look into that later. Okay, well, I didn't bother doing that anyway.
Fair
I
enough.
just got the ROM, and to be fair, I compared the ROM side by side with Let's Play footage on YouTube, and it looks like it's pretty much 1-to-1. Like, the emulation seemed pretty fine.
yeah.
So it's if it was something like Conquer or that sort of game which would suffer problems, then I would have made sure I got a physical copy. But no, this was fine for what it was. So and I tried playing it blind, and I somehow won my first match, but I didn't quite understand how. So I quit back out, and I think I spoke to you on Skype. I was like, yeah, dude, I won, but I don't know why. And you actually threw me a link to this informative video where it's these guys playing the game and explaining it as they were playing it. Like, were they translating it as well? And
Yes.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was quite interesting. I learned a little bit more from that, and then in the end I actually went and watched, there was a 5-minute YouTube tutorial just about Mahjong in general. So I watched that because it was a lot more digestible, and then I threw the game back on, and it is quite fun. But I mean, we'll go into the gameplay itself a little bit later. But I will say it wouldn't be the first game I decide to play if I wanted to play this sort of thing. I guess if you grow up with it, then maybe it's different. But I don't know. Initial thoughts, I think for what it is, it's perfectly well made, but it's not something I'd choose to play again.
Right. I mean, it's kind of lost on us because I think it's a cultural thing. I know Mahjong was originally created in China, and then the Japanese have their own version of it, and then I think there's even a smaller following still that play it in Korea as well. But those 3 areas are really the only ones that are very familiar with it, and then it has its smaller followings outside of those places. But those are kind of the 3 main areas.
It's got a large cult following in Australia.
Really?
I found out. Yeah, which I don't know if that's maybe because it's so close to Asia or what. But
I don't know.
Yeah, the YouTube video I watched, it was from like the official Australian Mahjong League.
Wow.
Which was quite interesting.
Yeah.
I guess we should take a little look behind the scenes now. Okay then, not quite as much as the last few weeks, where it's been like information overload, but I think you've got a little bit to say, haven't you, Clay?
Yes. I did a little research. There's not a lot of information on this game outside of kind of the basic facts of it, but regardless, we'll just kind of go through them. As I mentioned earlier, this was released April 4th of 1997 in Japan, and it was not released outside of Japan, obviously. So, as far as I know, there are no English translations for this game, and so you're just kind of on your own trying to figure out what means what. This game was developed by Chat Noir, who, as I barely was able to find any info on this company, but basically they only made Mahjong games. That was their thing. They made them from 1986 to 1999. They started out making them on the Famicom Disk System, and they went all the way up to the PlayStation before they stopped for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, but they no longer make games. This game, Mahjong 64, was published by Koei, however you say that, and they are they're the company that make the Dynasty Warrior games. So
okay,
yeah, so that is the behind the scenes.
Awesome,
short and
all
sweet,
right,
very very nice.
All right then, well, let's press ahead. Let's go straight into the presentation. Okay then, Clay, over to you.
All right. So the first thing that stands out is when you, well, actually, before I jump into that, let's just say, so when you start off the game, the main menu puts you in this school, and so you have different options. It's very similar to like Pokemon Stadium or Pokemon Puzzle League, and so the way that the menu works is there's kind of this overview of a college campus, and then when you select it, you go into this classroom, and the menus are kind of like chalkboards. And so I would say the menus themselves is pretty clever, I would say. It really works with the theme. Even if I can't read what the chalkboards are saying, I still think that was well done. But once you get into the actual game, there really isn't a lot of variation that you can put into these games, because no matter how you're playing Mahjong, the board is always set up the same way. The tiles are always designed the same way. So I think if you went off and did some really weird things with the art style, people would be upset. So there's not a lot of variation with that, especially from the 2 games that I saw. The one big difference that this game had, the other one didn't, is that this game has these realistic hand graphics that pick up the tiles and move them and place them down, and that was something the other game didn't have. Even though you could argue that these hands are a little creepy, they're, I don't know, maybe you can elaborate on this, but they kind of look like skeleton hands, because it's not all one object. There's like little different pieces to the fingers.
Right, so okay, now remember, this is primitive,
totally very early
3D,
yeah.
So what I thought was interesting was this is the only time I can think of where I've seen an N64 game where the hand isn't just, like a fist with the fingers drawn on.
Yeah.
It's just like they are individual fingers. But then I thought, well, that is literally the only 3D object being rendered on the screen. So
totally.
But yeah, they kind of look like, it kind of looks like a pink mound with a bunch of like hot dog sausages hanging out of it.
Yeah.
It's weird looking hand.
That's pretty fair.
Very strange,
I would say. But the movement looked pretty fluid. It wasn't really choppy or anything. So, I mean, I think it was cool that they put in the effort to make that what it was, you know. Other than that, visually, there's not a lot else. There are some character art that is used of some attractive Japanese college students who are, you know, fresh into college and ready to play some Mahjong. And so, whereas the other game I played, like I said before, had real pictures of, I'm assuming, real players, but they're all grumpy, old-looking dudes. So this one, I think, went for like more of a cool, hip, you know, visual style. So, anything else on visual? I think we pretty much covered that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just wanted to reiterate what you said about the tile design. How they don't really go for anything new because, as we'll go into a little later, the Mahjong tiles, it's a set standard.
Right.
They have to have these certain symbols on. But I suppose I personally thought they were a little bit small. Like, I found some of them, it was a little bit hard to see which was which.
Yeah.
But I guess that's just, you know, it's a low resolution game and they've got to display like, you know, 9 tiles on every hand and
Totally.
Yeah, it's but it looks fine for what it is. I haven't seen the other game, so I can't personally compare it, but yeah, I thought it got the job for the kind of game it is. It did fine, you know.
Totally. So next up is the music of the game. There's not too much to say. I mean, if you're listening to this, you're going to be hearing the music in between, so you can kind of, you know, decide for yourself. Me personally, I wasn't a huge fan of it. The main intro has these MIDI trumpets that just didn't sound super great, and the music, from what I could tell, was overly repetitive. It got the thumbs up in my household from the wife on super annoying music, and I think I agree with her, because I just had the ROM running while I was, you know, mapping my controls and stuff, and it was just playing over and over, and it got old really quickly, which I know some games back in the day like this get that way, but I just don't feel like they threw a lot into it. But it's a Mahjong game, so I wasn't really expecting much to begin with. What were your thoughts?
I kind of found it like, I'm trying to think how to describe it. I suppose it was like pleasantly obnoxious.
Yeah.
In that it was annoying, but it wasn't terrible. It was just, I don't know. I think the loops were too short, and the choice of MIDI instruments was probably not the best choice. Like the MIDI trumpets,
right,
were a little bit annoying, but
well,
it wasn't. Sorry.
Well, like you said, this was early on, so I'm sure they were still trying to kind of figure their way around the musical part of this console. So
yeah,
but no, I agree. It was cheerful and like upbeat, which I think fit the whole aesthetic of going off to college and all that stuff. So I think it fit. I just don't know if it was super great, but
yeah, I mean, I just wish the melody lines had been a little longer.
Yeah,
you know, the loops are just too short, and especially when it's, you know, this is the kind of game where if you're playing it properly, you're going to be sat there playing it for a while. So
totally, yeah, yeah, or just like no music while you're playing would be.
There probably is an option to turn the music off, but you know, I can't read Japanese. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so that's all I've kind of got for the presentation side of it. Okay,
well, this episode seems to be going way too long, so
you think?
Better hurry up, dude.
You think?
Yeah, I do think this could be beating our banjo record.
Oh, stay tuned.
Right, okay then. Let's have a look at the gameplay and mechanics. Alright then, gameplay and mechanics. This week I guess we're going to be covering... we're not going to give you like a full lesson in Mahjong, but we're going to kind of try to explain the game itself and then how this particular adaptation of Mahjong chooses to do its thing and the kind of unique options on offer. So, Clay, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll do my best. Like I said, we found a video online on YouTube where two gentlemen were playing through the game, and one guy spoke very good Japanese and was trying to interpret what he was playing and try to help you understand it. And so at the very beginning, he quickly went through some of the options and gameplay, options you have. Because like I said, basically the game starts out and you are new to this university in Japan and you are going to school for Mahjong, which I'm not sure if that's a real thing or not, but in this game you are going to school for this. And so like I mentioned earlier, the main menu is this university, and so as you scroll around there's these different things you can do, very similar to Pokemon Puzzle League. Anyway, so from what I gathered from this gentleman, your options were, there's just the main classroom where you learn your main lessons, I guess. There's a library. There's something where you earn a degree. I would guess maybe it's more of a championship thing.
Yeah.
There's a learn to play, which would have been nice if we could, read Japanese. We could have learned to play there. And then there's a place for students. I don't know exactly what that means, but that's just what he said. And then there's exit if you want to exit the game, I guess. And so, like I said, I spent most of my time in the main classes. I didn't really go in the other areas because I assume there's probably even a lot more writing and options in there that I wouldn't even know what I'm doing. So I just kind of went where the game starts you off at. I'm assuming that's what you did as well.
Yeah. Well, I was, I'd say the first time I played it, this was before I'd even seen that translation video. So I kind of botched my way into the game. I was just pressing everything, and I ended up getting onto the main class by accident, and then a game just sort of started. So I just rolled with it.
Okay.
I didn't concern myself with all the, deeper options in the game, because if I don't read Japanese, there really is no point, unfortunately.
Yeah. So obviously the main point of the game is you need to get your university credit. And so when you go into your classroom, there is a list that is kind of set up, I think, like a chalkboard somewhat, and it gives you a list of your total studies, and you have to do different things to get good grades, I guess, is what I'm getting from it. So that's kind of what sets you into playing the game. I'm not going to go in and say that I'm a pro or that I fully even understand Mahjong. Most of the videos that I looked at that explained to you how to play it were like close to 3 hours long. So there is a lot of depth and a lot to learn in this game. And I think that people in those cultures who love this game have been playing it since they're very young and have understood it since they were, for a long time. So,
if I could just throw something in here, I think the best way to describe the game to someone who's never played it, it's kind of like a mashup of dominoes and poker.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just my thought on it.
Cool. No, I think that's good. Honestly, when I was first starting out, I just wanted to know, like, because I like board games. I don't know if I've mentioned that here, but I do enjoy board games, and I've played some pretty complex ones. So I figured, I could pick this up pretty easily. And the core concept is pretty simple, relatively, and it like you said, it's similar to some games that we might know, but it gets so much deeper than that. And but anyway, I'm going to really quickly try to explain kind of how this works. Overall, the point of the game is to make 4 groups of tiles in your hand by the end of the game. And so basically there's like 3 different combos that you can do of tiles. And so there's a bunch of different tiles, and they're all listing different things. There's Manzu, Pinzu, Sozu, and Jihai. Probably not saying those right, so I apologize. The first 3 are basically just the numbers 1 through 9 that are done in a cool graphical way. One of them is using bamboo, and I can't even tell you what the other 2 are. So basically you have like 1 through 9, kind of like you would have in a, a deck of cards. Then the last ones, the Jihai, represent north, east, south, west, red, green, and white. So there's 7 of those. And so basically it is your goal to get these different pairs in your hand by the end of the game. And so the first way that you can group them up is by having 3 consecutive tiles of the same suit. 1, 2, 3, or 2, 3, 4. So just 3 of the same consecutive number in the same style suit. So that's the first one. That's basically just a sequence. The second one is 3 of a kind, which is pretty self-explanatory. And 3 of the same type of tile. Third one is 4 of a kind, which is also pretty simple. And then the last one is basically having a pair of identical tiles. So when you start off, you have a full hand row of tiles. And so you have to start off by discarding a tile, which I did not realize. I thought I was placing tiles down to play them when I started.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I was discarding until I watched.
Yeah, I made the same mistake for like the first 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, this one matches with this one, and really I was just getting rid of the tiles that would honestly be helping me. And I kept looking at everybody else's hands because there are 4 other players with you, computers or whatever, and they kept discarding things and nobody was making pairs. So I was like, this doesn't make any sense. But later I realized you're trying to get rid of things you don't need that aren't necessarily going to help you, while you're also trying to look at the tiles that other people are discarding, and looking at what they've discarded, you can think in your head, all right, so they've already discarded 2 of these, so I'm probably not going to come across those to make a pair, so I might as well get rid of this one. And so there is a little bit of looking at what other people are getting rid of to decide whether or not you might come across that later.
Which to me, that does actually add a unique layer of strategy to this game, in that, most games of a similar ilk, you can never really look at the burn pile, the discard pile.
Right.
Because you get to see pretty much everything they do. I suppose this would be a real good game for someone who's got like a really good memory for symbols and numbers. Personally, I just forget stuff really quick, so that wouldn't really help me, but it does add a unique bit of strategy to it.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if there's anything else you could add to that. I mean, that is kind of, as far as I could gather, the overall goal and what you're trying to do. I know there's probably a lot more strategy involved, and there is definitely more depth to it. But that was kind of the main takeaway I got from it.
Yeah, no, that is pretty much it. Yeah, I mean, there's other stuff, like there are like bonus tiles you can get which aren't part of the main suits, and like trump tiles, and certain types of game with different, because there are like different ways you can play this. There are different options, and there are certain rule sets you can set where they don't include the bonus tiles. I think, I told you I looked up that pro Australian Mahjong video. Like, they had a section in there where they said, most pro tournaments take out, there's like this certain kind of tile that you're not allowed to use in a reel. So, I guess there are variations on the main Mahjong theme. But the way you described it, though, that's pretty much, I'd say that's all you need to know going in as a beginner.
Okay.
So...
So I honestly, we didn't pick, I mean, this isn't the best foreign game for somebody to play. There's a lot of text that you need to be able to know what it is, and there is a cultural barrier where we're not necessarily familiar with this game. So hopefully in the future, I mean, we can find some Japanese games that, even if we can't read the text, maybe we could still understand the gameplay of it a little bit better. But it's a part of history. I know there was a ton of these variations of Mahjong used in video games starting, way back when. And so it seemed like each console, they would have multiple versions of it. So this was the first one. So I guess it's cool just to even take a look at, for that reason. overall it's a little difficult to dive into without a lot of outside knowledge of the game. So sorry, I'm jumping into final thoughts here. So if you want, we can move on into that.
Yeah, let's go for it. Okay then, so you already sort of started with your thoughts, but why don't you sort of go over that again and, you know,
okay,
collate that.
Yeah, let's see. I'll try to say what I haven't already said. Yeah, so there's more of these, and they are all, from what I can tell, pretty similar, but also from the little research I found, it seems like there are a lot of people who have good memories with this. You know, just like we grew up with the N64 in Japan, you know, kids grew up playing this version of it. So it's a cool game. It's way deeper than, you know, I would think of. United States, our kind of game of choice would be like checkers or chess or whatever. I don't even know where those originated, but that's kind of like the big game that we would learn growing up. And I feel like Mahjong is on a completely different level than those two, and so there's a lot to it, but I think it's rooted in a lot of history and tradition, and so for that reason I think it's really cool. I think the tile sets are really beautiful and well designed, and there's a reason that they haven't really been altered in any way. And so, in fact, I was looking up and I just saw a video there, a guy was showing off his Mahjong set, and the tiles just look super cool. Like, I would love just to have a set just because. But I would not like to have the set featured in this video game because they're small and lacking in detail.
Yeah. Okay, so I suppose for me, like, I enjoy board games and card games and table games, not to the extent of you, but you know, I'm always willing to try this kind of thing, and I thought this would be a bit of fun this week. Turned out to be a lot more complex than I'd anticipated.
Definitely. Like,
I was kind of expecting something maybe slightly more complex than Solitaire, but it turns out to be like a lot. There's a lot to it. But I would actually recommend, if you've never played Mahjong before, I would recommend giving it a go. I wouldn't recommend this version unless you speak, you know, or can at least read fluent Japanese. But, you know, you can play Mahjong online, I'm sure. Give it a go. It's an interesting game. As for this game itself, I think the presentation for a very, very early third-party N64 game is actually pretty decent. As I mentioned, the music can get a bit annoying, and the 3D hand looks kind of creepy, but overall, I mean, it gets the job done. And the... excuse me. The entire, like, university aesthetic, like, they didn't need to do that. So it shows they thought outside the box. They got a little bit more creative.
Yeah.
You know.
Definitely.
And, yeah. Overall, I mean, we don't really give, like, numerical scores on this. You know, it's not like, ooh, 10 out of 10. But overall, I'd say this is above average for what it's trying to be. And, yeah, well, it finally taught me to play Mahjong after, like, you know, 20 years of wondering what the hell it was.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that you mentioned the aesthetic of it was really, you know, I think kind of set it apart. And I haven't played all the Mahjong N64 games, but from the other one I played, it definitely set it apart. It at least tried to put you into this world or in a different setting than you would normally. You don't just power it on and immediately hit play game and then it deals out, you know, the tiles. It tried to create a little bit of lore and storyline behind it, so you kind of have this goal that you're working towards of, I'm assuming, you know, being the best in your college or getting the best grade or graduating or whatever. So there is a little bit of back theme behind it to try to kind of motivate you to win and be the best and all this stuff. So I'm sure if you didn't know this game, but you were, you know, you can read and speak Japanese, I'm sure you could learn it using this game rather than having to watch like YouTube videos. So it could serve a good purpose in teaching you to play it if only you can understand it, basically. So for that reason too, I think it's worth looking into, you know, if you can read it or whatever. So
okay, all right then. Well, yeah, it's been a bit of a long episode this week.
I'm exhausted, man.
Yeah, dude, it's like 4 a.m. over here.
We went real deep on this one.
Well, no, that was fun, dude, and it was a lot less stalling than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, I enjoyed that. Thanks everyone for listening. If you actually did listen, I hope you found something of interest this week. Join us next week where we're joined. Oh no, actually we're not. Sorry.
No.
Let me start that again. Join us next week where we're going to take a look at Wave Race 64, another early N64 game. And I believe, Clay, this is a particular favourite of yours, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites, for sure.
Yeah, if you couldn't tell from the opening titles, yeah, we've definitely got some affection for this game.
Yeah.
Check us out on kandclay.com to check out more of our content and links to our iTunes feed and YouTube channel. Visit us on Twitter at Strictly64. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or any game requests, then email us at strictly64@gmail.com. Okay then, thanks a lot for joining me again this week, Clay. I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, man. Thanks for doing this, and thank you everyone for listening.